Dungeon tiles. That is how I'm going to make an underground temple for this table. With a little bit of Super Sculpey and some dentist tools, I made a bunch of little tiles with my friends. Making one this big did take a couple of hours, but I made this one in about half an hour. This one too. This one's literally pushed in clay in squares. I even experimented using found objects to push impressions into the clay. Doing this for every single tile to make an entire temple is not sustainable in the slightest though. So what do you do?
Good luck.
Dungeon tiles are kind of a staple, I think, of Dungeons & Dragons. In fact, on this old blister, once containing miniatures, there's dungeon tiles on the back. This is from, it's bloody old, 1983. So this sort of thing is important to a lot of people. My friend Jeremy, Black Magic Craft, he kind of pioneered these foam tiles. What I'm trying to create today is more akin to what you'd see with, like, Dwarf Forge or Dwarven Forge. A little bit more detail, but it means we need to mold and cast. Okay, these are set. Before we cast these, I want to make some maybe cheaper alternatives. Not even just cheaper, different techniques. Let's experiment. So, to make my dungeon tiles, or as the back of that blister pack called them, adventure squares, every single one was made from a kitchen tile, just from the hardware shop, and I picked the ones that were most discounted, and it cost me bugger all. This tile in particular was made using googly eyes, which is super experimental, but I figured they might look like round cobblestones or something, maybe just a carved pattern, maybe something kind of alien or Aztec-y. This one was made from toothpicks and super glue, either to act as wood when I painted it, or as another nice carved stone pattern.
This one is textured spray paint. It has this granite effect. We'll just use it as is. Although I do have the stencil. Hey, that's pretty good. Pretty cool. And with the stencil, look at that. Bob's your uncle, mate.
The more tiles you make, the faster it is to make lots and lots and lots of them when you cast them. Good morning. Today is mold making day. To make our mold box, we're going to use Lego, but you could just use anything. Cardboard, I'm going to do one in an old blister pack. Now the material that we're going to make our molds out of is alginate, which is quite thick. So our molds don't actually need to be that accurate. They don't need to be that watertight because it's honestly going to hold in place pretty easily. Honestly, this is the cheapest painter's tape like money can buy, but you could use plasticine, Play-Doh, clay, anything really. These tiles are pretty heavy, so let's just bung it in. Get it like relatively square, but don't overthink it. Now we have our blister pack. I like using alginate as a mold making material because it's cheap, it's very easy to use, and I think it's probably a bit safer than the other alternatives. Your mixing ratio will vary, but this one's 1-for-1. Alginate and water. The other thing I really like about alginate is it sets up in about 15 minutes, which means you can make fun molds all day long. The downside of alginate is that because it's water-based, it dehydrates, so you only really get a few casts out of it, and you got to use it immediately. Dump that bad boy on. Let's come back in 15 minutes. Yeah. Oh, so easy. That's what I like about alginate. Cool. Nice. Beautiful. Okay, we have these molds, and because they're water-based, they leak a bit of water. So we're going to dab that out. This one. I'm actually going to spray paint the inside of these molds. my strategy adding plaster is literally just add it to water and add enough that it doesn't really want to absorb into the water on its own anymore. Yeah, that'll do. I'm also going to add a fun colour of paint. Just a bit. Oh, that's nice. Look at that. That's bloody top. Oh, this one's weird.
What are you doing?
Just making these tiles. I'm just sanding them nice and smooth.
Have you fed her?
Yeah.
Oh, you lied to me, Faye.
The painting process for these tiles was a bit experimental, but I really like the end result. I painted them with watered down paint, and the idea was that the pigment would sort of absorb into the plaster. I don't know if that really worked, but my hope was that if they get chipped a little bit, there'd still be nice colour underneath. Then I dry brushed them before hitting them with some oil washes, which I scrubbed off with a rag. I want these tiles to be grimy and dirty, maybe a little bit slimy looking. After all, this is like sort of a tropical dungeon, but for a little bit of variation in texture, I used weathering pigments as well as chalk pastels. Because these are made from plaster of Paris, I was kind of worried that they would eventually scratch up rubbing on each other, so I incorporated those scratches into the design, and I sort of pre-weathered them with steel wool. Okay, you ready? Ta-da! And just like that, we have dungeon tiles. And I've just put all these tile pieces on top of a pin board, which I painted black with some texture paste. And now, in theory, I can just move it all as one piece. I'm so excited to use this table, and it basically took a weekend to make. Very cruisy and very cheap project. Alginate, plaster, a couple of tiles, some clay. You could use air dry clay too, whatever you want. And you know, the funny thing is that I made that little googly-eyed tile and I thought, oh, this is just a dumb one, but it's actually my favorite from the set. And that's why you should experiment for sure. Okay, thank you so much. I'll see you next time. You're the bloody best. Thank you so much for all the support. I gotta go. But you're the best.